salinity is not a barrier to production. And somebody supporting that argument is the second speaker of the affirmative team. Would you please make Glenys Batchelor welcome?
I would like to say that I'm going to tell my story and the story of what I think the Wheatbelt's about from my head, but from my heart. So, I find sharing stories really powerful, and I think some of the issues we're dealing with today really require a change. And I think no matter how much data people can put up, quite often it's actually not going to be enough for people. What you really need to do is to be able to change attitudes and thinking. And sometimes it's that simple and it's that easy. So that's what we're trying to do today. So to start off with, I need to clear up the fact that I'm not a farmer. So most of you that have seen me around the place over the years are probably going, "Farmer? What's she talking about?" I did actually Google the definition of a farmer, and I was like, well, actually, it's not that far off, really, in some of the things I get up to. However, I'm not going to go any further with that one either. However, I would say that I might not be a traditional farmer, but in actual fact, I'm not talking about my gender either, but regardless, I consider sometimes we are farmers, and I'd also like to say it's great to see more women in production these days in agriculture, or more properly being recognised for it. So, reality is I grew up on a farm in South Tamman, which is a very small shire, which is the most affected salt shire, which is in the most affected region, which is probably the most affected salt region in the whole of the Australia. And I think you're getting the picture here. Salinity looms large. So we really started to make a change because we've never seen salinity as being something that you need to fear. As a child, I grew up watching the paddock across the road go saline. It was the classic salt story around the fact that it was the most productive valley floor land, and it was cropped really well until basically it fell over, and the cattle and the sheep that used to be across the road had to leave. We were ended up with a beautiful white pristine saline area, and I noticed this because as a child I used to ride my push bike down, and gradually I had nowhere to put the push bike under the trees because they all died. I'd also say 40 years on, that land that I used to look across the fence at now belongs to my husband and I, and it's through choice, not through inheritance. So about 15 years ago, we were given the opportunity to purchase about 2,000 acres, 700 of which we didn't have to pay for because it wasn't considered arable or productive. And it was the case because the area we're talking about is some of it was as salty as the Samphire that my colleagues talked about. So the common theme in years gone by was that you would just basically continually crop until it fell over and became completely unproductive. And what used to happen was farmers would actually purchase other farms. This would happen in good years, but unfortunately we haven't had that many good years of late, although this year was firing up to look pretty good. So we need to be thinking about the question, which is how we're going to increase productivity. And this area, the majority of farmers simply shut the gate and used to just think it was fabulous. So luckily for me and my family, I grew up with my dad hanging over the fence talking to the late great Clive Malcolm, who was one of the pioneers of certainly saline production. And my mother always used to say that my father loved his sheep much more than his family. And interestingly, when Clive was telling Dad this story about, well, actually that increasing saline land that you've got there, we could feed your sheep on it, my dad was sold. And so basically, he is now has continued to plant saline and saltbush across the land, and now the valley floor looks completely covered, or in most part, and also has an understory of bluebush with it. So Clive Malcolm was very much a key person in my childhood and also across the whole scale of productivity. And I also wanted to just quickly mention Arjun Ryder, who was another researcher who certainly contributed to this story. So Val Arjun. So, as the beautiful, iconic wheatbelt trees gradually succumbed to salinity and the wet feet and fell over and the landscape changed forever, we got busy. South Tamman was a Landcare Vision Alcoa group, and we had support from the Department of Agriculture and Wendy Diamond. The South Tamman area also put on a spectacularly successful Boundana alley farming with trees, and that land is now croppable. Last year we planted the enriched suite of species, including the Eremophila that helps reduce methane production and greenhouse gas emissions. This year we planted the newly christened Anamika, Old Man Saltbush, named after another famous Tamman property that had a lot of research through Ed Barrett Leonard and of course Hayley Norman. Spent much of my career, beginning over 25 years ago in a revegetation nursery, growing local species, trying to encourage planting of trees and understories and coming up with strategies around economic value. I don't think that's how we're going to do this. I trawled for hours through limited botanical texts at the time to find that we had durable timber and nectar-producing species, which clearly didn't echo with the broad acre farmers. I now find the message we're giving is around carbon. I found Landcare and NRM has always been about trying to find those additional benefits. And I really struggle with this because surely the environment and the issues we're facing should be enough. But we're here to talk about productivity. So I spent 5 years working with Wallerton and with Richard and Michael, who's not here, and Seth chimed in as well, which was one of 4 CDI projects across the state. The question was always about why, and it is that simple. Why are we doing it? Why is it still about traditional grains? Why aren't we looking outside the usual suspects? So I'm arguing today that beauty and like productivity is in the eye of the beholder. If you can try, see Saline for its land for its functionality, what it can do, not what it can't do, and what its limitations are. Again, we've had great research from a whole range of people. I'm looking for that bell. And that's included SGSL, CSIRO, NRM, CDI Catchment, and more recently, the Future Farm Industries. Meanwhile, I was at Wallerton, and it was like being a kid in a lolly shop because, and I know it's not PC anymore because Nestle's got rid of that killer python because it's so bad for us, but it was really wonderful to have the opportunity to deal with something that had been an intractable issue in our family for generations. We had 15 demonstration projects and it led to over 50 other projects in a 45,000 hectare area. They were engineering and plant-based options, and it included looking at water supply. The Green Paper on Agriculture released this week says our national government sees agriculture as one of the 5 pillars of the economy. Drought is an issue that needs to be addressed, and as well as that is the need to support strong and vibrant regional communities. It mentions mental health and supporting farmers on a range of levels. We're dealing with some major issues as a society, and maybe community and smaller farms, like our little one, are the way for the future. The Wheatbelt NRM work on resiliency and tipping points is important. So, is salinity a barrier to productivity? I don't think so. I think, like I said, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and if you can see the potential, the stereotype can get broken. I have to tell you that over the years as small farmers, we've tried everything. And again, those of you will know because we absolutely have had all the different species of timber. We've looked at every other species. We looked at the Search, Melaleucas, and I know there's a lot of you in the audience that have shared that journey. Recently, CEDA was actually in this very room talking about the state of this region and the state of the nation. And we were told that agriculture and food security is back. I don't think it ever went away. But Mick Keogh cautioned that the dining boom won't be the same as the mining boom. I'm not sure that's such a bad thing because my family's a beneficiary, and interestingly, the future is going to be about small farms and larger ones. This leads right into what we're up to at the moment. Our engineering solution was to use the water that would normally go to the salt flats down on the valley floor, 5 times sea-line seawater, and we pump that into our sheds and we grow trout. Now, where is Natasha? Because she'll laugh. Yes, she makes me laugh about the joke that I am actually a farmer now. I'm a trout farmer, God forbid, sorry, because we're actually in the countrymen around this. But interestingly, because of this venture, We have now gone into tourism and we hosted our first RAC bus tours this year. Who knew? Visitors taste test the trout, the barramundi. We give them saltbush cookies, thanks to Harry Lork, and we provide them with a sustainability story about farming and adaptability and diversification. They experience the wheat belt and what it has to offer. They come from the city and they go back to Perth with hopefully a better understanding. So is salinity a barrier to productivity? Way better than that. I used to say at the end of my Wallerton presentations that if you gave a man a fish and he eats for a day, teach him to fish and he'll manage the future. I've kind of varied that because it's around about how you do the fishing that's important. And thanks to salinity, mine and my community and my little family is looking and tasting pretty good right now. Beat that, guys.